Welcome to another Alfred Hitchcock classic on ABC2. This time, The Man Who Knew Too Much, which was made in 1955. At this time, the British-born director was at the height of his success. Rear Window, made the previous year, had been a huge hit, and he produced 3 films in 1955, To Catch a Thief, which was also a big success, and the quirky black comedy The Trouble with Harry, which was less successful. There was some surprise when he announced that his next film would be a remake of one of his early films. The original The Man Who Knew Too Much was made in Britain in 1934, and it was his greatest success from that period. The original film starred Leslie Banks and Edna Best as an English couple holidaying in St. Moritz, which was where Hitchcock spent his honeymoon, when a murdered French spy with his dying breath tries to tell the husband about a political assassination to take place in London. To keep the Englishman quiet, the plotters kidnap his little girl. The remake sticks to the same plot, except that the opening scenes take place in Morocco, in Marrakesh, and the kidnapped child is a boy, not a girl. The couple are played by James Stewart and Doris Day. They're Ben and Joe McKenna, who come from America's Midwest. He's a doctor, and she's a former singer, which gives Day, a popular star of musical comedies in the 50s, the chance to sing Que Sera, Sera, a song which became a huge hit. The remake is about 50 minutes longer than the original, and some critics at the time of its release complained that Hitchcock had lost his touch. They had fond memories of the brisk, terse, black and white British version, and they thought the remake inflated and stodgy. But today, most people consider the 50s version superior. As Hitchcock himself told Francois Truffaut in their famous interview, the first version was made by a talented amateur, and the second was made by a professional. Hitchcock doesn't like to hurry. He carefully establishes his characters so that we invest in them and care about them. As the action travels from Morocco to London, the suspense gradually mounts, and the moral dilemma becomes clear. Who is more valuable, an important diplomat or your own son? The climax comes during a concert at the Albert Hall, a scene almost identical to that in the original, except that again it runs longer, and as a result the suspense is extended. Music buffs note that Bernard Herrmann, the composer of music for Citizen Kane and some of Hitchcock's finest films, can be seen conducting the orchestra in the concert scene. The original film was released just after Hitler and the Nazis came to power in Germany. The remake came out at the height of the Cold War, and Hitchcock makes oblique references to the Soviet Union's relations with Hungary without spelling anything out clearly. He was, after all, not making a political film, but a consummate entertainment.
The following program is rated PG. Parental guidance is recommended for persons under 15 years.
Welcome to another Alfred Hitchcock classic on ABC2. Hitchcock earned his reputation as a director in Britain in the 20s and 30s. He'd directed some 25 features in the UK, most, not all, of them thrillers, before he moved to America in 1939 to film a very British book, Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca, which was a great success. 2 more American films followed before Hitchcock re-teamed with the female star of Rebecca, Joan Fontaine, for Suspicion, which was released in 1941. Like Rebecca, Suspicion was based on an English book, Before the Fact, by the crime writer Francis Iles. It's a story about Lena Mackinlaw, a bored, rather dowdy, middle-class woman who marries a charming older man and then begins to suspect him. In essence, the plot is actually very similar to that of Rebecca. To play Johnny, the charming but suspect husband, Hitchcock cast the sexiest British actor in Hollywood at the time, Cary Grant. It was the first time they worked together, but it wouldn't be the last. In some ways, Suspicion is a bit unsatisfying. Crucially, the ending of the book has been changed, and though Hitchcock wasn't averse to that, his own idea of a very ironic and typically Hitchcockian ending wasn't permitted by the studio RKO. Nor was Hitchcock entirely pleased with the studio's production design, which was the work of the veteran Van Ness Paul Glaze, who had designed the Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers musicals. Hitchcock told Francois Truffaut that the elegant sitting rooms, the grand staircases, the lavish bedrooms, these were the elements that displeased me. He also thought it all looked too glossy. He knew that this Hollywood idea of life in the English countryside was false, but it was early in his career as a Hollywood director, and he didn't have the power to say no. Nevertheless, he had a great deal of fun with the English characters, pointedly sending up their middle-class values, just as he'd done in his British films. And he had some fine character actors to work with: Cedric Hardwicke and Dame May Whitty as Lena's parents, Nigel Bruce as Johnny's silly-ass friend Beaky, and also Isabel Jeans, Leo G. Carroll, and Heather Angel. As a local crime writer who considers her fictional murderers to be heroes, Oriel Lee, in her only screen appearance, does a spot-on impersonation of Dorothy L. Sayers. Despite all the problems, Hitchcock's touches are everywhere, from the opening in darkness in a railway compartment with dialogue full of double entendres which foreshadow a similar scene in North by Northwest, to the famous climax in which Johnny walks up the stairs with a glass of milk, milk which positively glows, and no wonder, because Hitchcock had placed a tiny light bulb in the glass. Joan Fontaine won an Oscar for her performance as Lena, but she never worked with Hitchcock again.
The following program is rated PG. Parental guidance is recommended for persons under 15 years.